Hi, everybody. Welcome to Conversations with Calvin, We the Species. Chronologically, it's February 10th, and today was one of the first days in weeks that the temperature went over 32 degrees. It's like, wow, we've had one hell of a cold spell, 2 weeks, like no, I mean, cold, 0, 2 degrees. So I'm so excited. It's over 30. I went out in the backyard in my shorts and laid in a lounge chair trying to get some sun. I'm teasing. I didn't do that. Anyway, uh, I've been doing this podcast for a long time, 5.5 years, and there's 700 of these videos floating around YouTube, and I've interviewed people all over the world. Um, but we're going to talk to Howard Levinson out there in Missouri. Is that the Show Me State?
And it's a show me state.
Okay, I have to remember that. So I'm with Howard Levinson, who's done more diverse things, from being a paramedic and a police officer in folk and rock, and a whole eclectic music and a disaster first responder, et cetera, and a novelist. There's so much on the plate, and I'm always grateful to the wonderful universe for doing the connectivity. I don't do it; the universe does. And Howard and I got connected, and we've been planning this thing for a long time. This is a really special, fascinating interview with a really special, fascinating person. So I labeled it a life of course service, song and story. Just a really fascinating journey. Howard is live in Missouri, where he's from. So this little bit of a monologue. I used to call this my Johnny Carson monologue, but there really wasn't a lot of humor here because this is good, heavy stuff. But anyway, Howard, if you want to say a few words, a little background, whatever, and then we will jump into your life.
I could probably reply with, you have one of the more diverse backgrounds as well. So we're kind of two peas in a pod here talking to one another, I have to say, I mean, we've both been around a long time and done a lot of stuff.
Well,
So thanks for having me on.
well, thank you, thank you, thank you. Um, yeah, we were chatting. Obviously, we chatted before we went on air here. Backgrounds and journeys and things and army and stuff and I told Howard a little bit about my spirituality, which is kind of haunting and it's overwhelming spirituality. As a matter of fact, that actually led me to write the Pope a few months ago to kind of just let the Pope know, Pope Leo XIV, about this spiritual journey of mine, which is um, rather haunting. And I kind of laid some of that on Howard. Anyway, so let's let's jump into some of my notes and some of the things we talked about. Uh, as I alluded to, Howard, you have one of the most diverse backgrounds that I've ever seen. Paramedic, you were police officer. I don't know if I mentioned that, but you were in law enforcement, disaster response, chiropractic physician. I have here. You're a novelist, singer-songwriter. Um, when you look back, is there a common thread that puts all of this together?
I think a lot of it started, I mean, back when I was a kid. I would watch all the shows, and my parents used to say, whether a cowboy show, you'd be dressed up in a cowboy suit, and when you police show, you'd strap on your little cap guns. And so I think I was influenced by television a lot growing up. But, as I got older, I was thinking about, I went to college for a couple of years and that didn't really trip my trigger. And like you said, in spirituality, things just fall into your path. And so what fell into my path was I met a guy who was a paramedic, and it sounded like a pretty cool job. And so I said, "Well, I'll do that." And I became a paramedic. And as I was a paramedic, I got kind of hooked on the adrenaline rush of it all. Being right there when all the shit was taking place. And then I became friends with some cops, and rather than being called after the shit hit the fan, I thought, well, maybe I ought to be there when it hits the fan. And so I became a cop and did that for many years. And let's see, other careers. All that at the same time, and I'd been a medic for a long time, and I'd seen so much stuff in the hospital, worked in the hospital in the ER for many years, and I'd done a lot of, we, you know, pushed a lot of drugs as medics, and I did autopsies, did all kinds of stuff, and I was kind of getting disenchanted with being in a hospital setting and blood and all that kind of stuff. And that's what I thought, maybe there's another healthcare profession. So I looked into others, and I became friends with a guy who's a chiropractor, and he said, "Why don't you try chiropractic?" So I worked as a cop, you know, at night, and I went to chiropractic school during the day, and I became a chiropractor. So that's kind of how my path went. And it's primarily, if you really look at it, it's all public service, really. Um,
Yeah.
so, it was, even though it was maybe the incentive was really the adrenaline rush and that kind of thing, it really turned out to be a pretty good thing where I was, being a public servant about my whole life.
Does that all of that diversity in your background that well, let me rephrase this. Was there a moment in your early life when you realized you were drawn to storytelling, whether it's music, writing, public service, it's all under the umbrella of storytelling. When did you ever realize that? Or as you said, you were watching TV, and was that one of the sparks?
TV wasn't a spark as far as my writing. I think it was, I mean, I was doing some short story writing when I was in high school. And then when I went to college, I took some creative writing classes, and I did pretty well in those and got some interesting comments from teachers on the stories I wrote because there was a lot of fictional stuff. And so there was a spark there that I like to write. And then when I was in college, I got into a rock band, and I started writing songs musically, and the rock band did the songs, and so I just kept on writing, just steady progression of what am I to do next. And like, you're an author, you don't know where the muse is going to strike, but when it does, you got to put pen to paper or
Right,
finger to key nowadays.
right, right. Yeah, it's funny. I told you a story of my first novel. I watched Casablanca, and the last scene, and boom, and all of a sudden, out of the clear random universe, my first novel pops into my head, and I never wrote anything before. So I came down here and started the whole process of writing a novel, which I knew nothing about. Uh, but as you just said, Howard, it's there, and you realize it. Um, uh, I mentioned I have a friend who lives in rural Missouri, my friend Bill Bates, in Rolla, which is near you. How did growing up and living in rural Missouri influence some of the themes of your songwriting? Did it?
Yeah, I mean, I'm from St. Louis, which in the scheme of things, that's about an hour and 20 minutes east of where I'm at right now. I'm in the middle of Missouri now, but anyway, St. Louis is, I mean, comparatively speaking to the nation, is still a small town. The joke in St. Louis, you could get from one end to the other in 30 minutes, and everybody knew what high school you went to as soon as you said I went to the high school. Oh, we know that guy and this. So it was small town, but I think a lot of it, um, especially I've had a lived on a I've had a farm for well over 30 years, and we've lived here on the farm for about 6 years now. Um, it's just a much slower, easygoing pace than in the city. I mean, St. Louis, like I said, compared to Chicago or LA or New York, it's nothing. But still. when I go into St. Louis or something to visit kids or grandkids or whatever, it's like, damn, where did all these people come from? Why are there so many cars? It's like it's like what the hell? I live 3 miles up a gravel road, and so
Wow, is that right?
yeah, and
Wow,
so it could go hours before another car drives, on my
wow,
gravel road, Yeah.
wow. I can't. It's funny. In my writing, in my tortoise novel, I write about the fact that, I live in Jersey. It's the most densely populated state. And I open up, I look out the window and I see all 8 million of my neighbors. They're all out there. And that's Jersey. And of course, you go to work, you get up and you drive, and you wonder why it takes you hours to go, 5 miles because all 8 million of us are on the road. Um, uh, and then I went to Sedona, Arizona 12 times, kind of near you. I did my spiritual journeys
Mhm.
to Sedona 12 times, climbing mountains, finding the vortex. Um, and one time I did a pink Jeep tour, and all I did was rave and go crazy about the beauty, the pristine beauty of Sedona with the red mountains and the silence. And I'm in this open Jeep with about 8 or 9 people from all over the country. And I'm raving and raving about it for like a half hour. Finally, the tour guy was driving the Jeep, stops the Jeep, turns around, looks at me and says, I've been doing this a long time. Nobody's ever raved about Sedona and Arizona like you. Why don't you're from Jersey, why don't you just move here? And everybody stopped and looked at me. And then I said, something very profound. I said, I can't move out here because I'm addicted to the smell of car exhaust in the morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
Nobody got that, but it was very deep. And I kind of borrowed that from Apocalypse Now. And the truth is, I'm addicted to this is my state, and I'm comfortable with it. And I can't conceive of 3 miles up a gravel road to get home. But hey, I think it's great, Howard. Okay, moving along. Your songs touch on broken hearts and bad habits and fast cars and sinners and saints, which is classic American themes. Uh, does any one of these themes like resonate with you a little bit more?
I guess probably bad habits, because I've had a bunch and try to get rid of most of them, so that's I think that's true of most everybody. Um, and then sinners and saints, there's a little bit of that in each of us. We each have two different parts of us. There's the good part and the bad part, and it's always a battle as to which one you're going to listen to. You know. So yeah, those are and those are kind of themes that's kind of universal in songwriting. Of course, you can't. The old adage in songwriting from I think I can't remember was it Harlan Howard. Somebody said, "What's country songwriting? Three chords and the truth." So as long as you stick to the truth, you come out with a pretty good song.
Okay. Um, you record in Nashville. Interestingly, over the last few months, I actually interviewed two other Nashville. Mark Anthony, been in Nashville 33 years, and before him, I interviewed an Abby Grace, uh, who recorded in Nashville as well, and she's actually from northwestern, way up in northwestern Canada. I've never been to Nashville. Someday I'll get there. That's on my little list. But anyway, you record in Nashville. What is that experience like for you? Especially coming from such a diverse professional life as you've had.
Well, I would say it's magical. Um, it is. I mean, I guess it's probably been about a dozen years when I first started. I was actually lecturing. I was an investigator in healthcare fraud enforcement. And I was lecturing at a conference in Nashville. And I just happened to talk to another guy that was another presenter. And he said, "Yeah, I'm a songwriter." And I said, "Yeah, me too." And he goes, "And I'm going to this studio here on a break from the conference. I'm going to record a song." I said, "Well, you mind if I tag along?" I tagged along and I met a producer. And, next thing you know, I'm recording in Nashville. And it's like, it's so, you go in, you email back and forth with a producer. Here's my song, here's the lyrics, here's the melody. Maybe send them an MP3 or something, or a WAV file. And then you go back and forth and they're kind of helping you with it. And then you get down there and you're sitting in a room with about half a dozen studio musicians, and you play the song for them. And then all of a sudden, these guys, within 5 minutes, have got the song, have added things that you never even thought of that made the song 100 times better. And, oh, I think I'm going to do a little organ here, and then we're going to do some harmonics on guitar here, and then we're going to have slide guitar here. And that by, an hour later, I mean, I'm not kidding, an hour later, they're done. And
Wow.
it's like, holy cow. And I got to put my vocals on and everything like that. And then we got to mix it. But it's like these guys are just magical. And I've gone many times since then. And it's always the same process with those guys. And it's so funny that they will then go, the guys that are in this one studio on Music Row, I'd be working with them for an hour or better. And then they'll get up and go, "Oh, we got to go down the road to this other studio because we're working for them that day." And so it's like they're paid guys. Many of them were seasoned, like senior citizen type guys, and they'd been on the road with everybody from Winona Judd to Rita McEntire to Blake Shelton for years, and they don't want to travel anymore, so they come back to Nashville and they just go from studio to studio making magic. And that's the only thing, that's the only word I can describe how it is in there. It's just magical.
Wow. So interesting because they know what they're doing and they've been doing it, and the whole mystique of Nashville, it really, really works. That's so interesting. Okay. Um, because you're a novelist and you're a songwriter, and these are all ideations that come to you. Do you differentiate? I mean, I could sometimes think maybe a song can become a novel can become a song. Do you differentiate between what becomes a song and what becomes a novel since you do both?
Well, songwriting, I have to confess that songwriting is so much easier than noveling because it's
Yeah.
shorter, you know, and you don't have, half a dozen characters to develop over a period of time with character arcs and things. In songwriting, you come up with a hook line or a theme or something, and then you develop, how you want the song to go. So, yeah, it's a lot different between the two. Of course, but they both start with an idea. Sometimes, like in noveling for me, my my novels usually started with a what if. What if this guy did this? Or what if this happened? And then it gets your mind thinking on what if, and then you end up with a story, and then you have characters all of a sudden. When I write in noveling, my characters tell me the story. That's how it ends up with my books. Um, I may start off with a character doing such and such a thing, and as I write, I don't know if I call it mystical or whatever. As I write, that character will take me. I mean, I'm writing, but it's really what they just tell me to do. In songwriting, it's it's a little easier just because I'm writing a song that's going to be probably no longer than 4 minutes. So I'm going to have a bridge, a chorus, and a verse, and a chorus, and a verse, and a bridge maybe, and then I'm done. You
Okay.
know.
While we're talking about songwriting, as I'm reading about you and some of your um, some of your idols, Chuck Berry, Johnny Cash, the Eagles for the harmony. Uh, um, um, I just listened and watched twice, 2 times in a row, because when I like something, I obsess about it. I watched a documentary. I didn't realize how much I loved Gordon Lightfoot.
Oh,
And there's a thing, I think it's on Netflix, his when he was still around, and he did a whole documentary on his life, his journey, his music, his and all of that, and it's like wow. And to
I'm gonna
me, one
check
of
that out. Yeah.
huh? Yeah, I watched it twice in a row because I'm haunted. So so you have such a wide um, diverse background in music. But my question was, Gordon Lightfoot. And what's interesting in the documentary, of course, no one would really know this, but Bob Dylan loved Gordon Lightfoot. And Bob Dylan, maybe the greatest, one of the great lyricists of all times, obviously he won a Nobel Prize. And they wanted to meet, and so Gordon Lightfoot was getting all these awards. He's from Canada, and he's getting all these awards every year. Song of the Year, Entertainer of the Year, and I guess it's equivalent to the Canadian Grammys. And he turned it down every year. He didn't. He said, and he finally told them, I'll accept the award if you get Bob Dylan to present it to me." And nobody tells Bob Dylan what to do. Duh. But anyway, one year Dylan decided to do that, so he presented the award to Gordon Lightfoot. So my question, long-winded, you like Gordon? Do you like his music and
Yeah.
stuff?
Yeah.
The song, to me, one of the most haunting songs, and it's long. It's way longer than 3 or 4 minutes. Is
Shipwreck.
yeah, the Edmund Fitzgerald. Yeah. And I've listened to it, over the years. You hear it when I'm playing Pandora. It's haunting,
It is.
and it actually it emotes me and takes me on a journey. It's one of to me is one of the most powerful songs. What a talent he was. Anyway, um, moving on. Moving on, our little journey here. So your law enforcement career spanned 22 years, and you did stuff in under the vein of organized crime and terrorism stuff. Um, was there any kind of a pivotal lesson you learned about human nature during that time?
Um, I guess man is evil, you know. I mean, there is an evil nature in man, and some, have the ability to not be evil, and others choose not to, and will take advantage of every opportunity they have to continue to be evil and be more evil. I mean, look at October 7th. Talk about evil, So, I mean, in my career in law enforcement was I was fortunate enough be on a lot of special assignment teams, homicide and organized crime and undercover narcotics and all that kind of stuff. And I pretty much saw the gamut of evil, and so it's out there, it's and if I mean there are some people who are, I don't know if it's Pollyannic or sophomoric, but they really do think people are good, and I'm a little tainted. There are good people, but there is a lot of bad. There's a lot of bad.
Yeah, I know that. I know that. It's funny. My novel Tortoise. As I'm doing the talk show circuit myself a bit, and so one of the questions people ask me, what do you want people to take away from your novel? And it's because of all my spirituality and stuff, and it's simple. This ain't the end. This is just a way station here, and because of all the things that have happened to me, it's convinced me that there are things beyond our understanding, and you can call it whatever you want to call it. I don't call it anything, and I call everything spirituality. I don't label anything, it's spirituality, which means it's beyond our comprehension and understanding, but it's there. And so the lesson to all the people who do bad things, um, it ain't over. Uh, we
we hope
hope,
that there is a,
we
we hope
hope.
that there is accountability at the
Yeah,
end of the line,
yeah. And you know what? And the thing is, what scares me is eternity is a long time.
Yeah,
And
so to say.
60 or 70 years here, whatever gratification one gets in being evil, and to think if you have to pay up for that, eternity is a I'm making this up as I go along. Eternity is a long time. Listening to you, Howard. So anyway, all right, moving along. Um, Interesting question. So did the moral, as I'm listening to you, the moral complexity of your job, seeing the best and the worst in people shape your writing or your music? Did any of that come out in your music?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've written a few pretty dark songs about, relationship troubles and um, songs where, there's a homicide or something in it, songs where, people are, my character who's singing the song is, does so many bad things. He has blackout. I mean, there's a lot of I have written a lot of songs that have been, I guess, formulated by some of the stuff I've seen and then on the flip side, I've got some more spiritually based songs that are uplifting and have a better moral character to them.
Okay. Okay. Um, we're going to drift off topic now. A couple of Calvin's favorite questions to ask. And to be transparent, I borrowed this particular question from Barbara Walters, who was one of my heroes. So, Howard Levinson, here's the first question. Excluding family or friends, somebody living or dead you'd like to spend a day with. It could be one or two answers, whatever. There's no rules.
Including living or they can still be dead.
Yeah, living or dead, excluding family and friends, living or dead, somebody you'd like to spend a day with. A couple people, whatever. One, two, whatever.
Hemingway would be one.
Aha.
I'd spend the day with him
Yep.
down in Key West.
Yep.
Spend the day with him down in the house in Key West. Um,
I'm looking for a book.
and I should probably be more spiritual and say something spiritual, but it doesn't come to mind right now. Lyrically, Tom Petty. I'd like to spend the day with Tom Petty. So there you got writing and songwriting.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I was looking for a book because when you said Hemingway, obviously one of my heroes, the king, the everlasting king of less is more. And it's funny, I'm in this writing group. And when we go off here, I'll tell you about it if you're interested. I'm in this writing group, and just yesterday, oh gosh, I swear, just yesterday they talked about Hemingway. Oh, oh, that's so. Just yesterday, I have my notes from yesterday. This is so funny. Yesterday, Kay Wagner was talking about Hemingway, who once had to prove to some friends. I don't know if you know about this, but he wrote a six-word story. I don't know if you ever heard of this.
Story, I don't remember it, but I know I've heard it.
Yep.
Yeah.
So he was with friends, and Hemingway said, because he's the king of less is more, he said, I can write a story in 6 words.
What about shoes? I don't
Yeah, that's
remember.
right. That is
Yeah.
right.
Okay.
All right. Way to go. Way to go. I swear this came up yesterday. So the 6 word story that Hemingway wrote is for sale, baby shoes never worn.
Yeah. That's great.
Wow. So my assignment for the group is I got to do one of those myself.
Oh, that's tough.
Yeah, it's tough. And I gotta,
That's tough.
I'll cheat. I'll go to AI. I'm
That's
gonna
another
cheat.
topic.
That's enough. We're going to talk about that before we wrap it up. All right. The other, so you had great answers. Really, that the Hemingway thing was a lot of life is so synchronistic because and it's funny. I met when I was doing my journalism actively. I got very involved with a group of they called themselves Neo-Latino artists, and they were from all over the hemisphere, north and south, Southern Hemisphere, and they're all amazing neo-Latino artists, and I became friends with a whole bunch of them, and I was doing stories and interviewed them, had them on my TV show, and one of the guys, Raul Villarreal, his father when Hemingway was spending lots of time in Cuba at the finca, that was the name of his estate there. Many years ago, or early on, there was a little boy, maybe 11 or 12, and he kind of semi-adopted the little boy, and the little boy took care of things and wound up spending like 20 or 25 years with Hemingway and grew up and became like Hemingway's son. And so Villarreal, I forgot his first name, wrote a book about his life being Hemingway's other son. And he signed it over to me, and I read the book. So interesting, all the stuff about Hemingway and just funny stuff. Anyway, um, the other quick
I can
question,
write that down. Okay,
sure.
go ahead. I'm gonna get that book.
You know what? I'm going to move. I think I have it. I hope I'm taking my picture down right here on air. It doesn't. I'm trying to. Yeah, here it is. I knew I have it because it's a very prized possession for me. And now I'm going to put my picture of the Yankees back up. And the book is called. Here we go. Okay, the book is called Hemingway's Cuban Son,
Okay,
and it was
great.
written by Rene Villarreal and Raul Villarreal, and this, of course, is my friend Raul's father Rene, and it's just a really interesting story of this little boy growing up and spending all those years with Hemingway. Of course, he autographed it and stuff, but it was a really interesting read. Um, Small world. Um, the other off-topic question: do you have any like favorite movies?
This will sound funny, but like I like The Big Lebowski. I like Pulp Fiction.
Yeah, yeah.
I like Reservoir. I like a lot of Quentin Tarantino stuff.
Okay.
Reservoir Dogs.
Okay.
Anything with Harvey Keitel. I really like him as an
Love it.
actor.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Absolutely. And I watch Pulp Fiction a lot. And that dance scene with John Travolta and Uma Thurman
Yeah.
when they're dancing in that 50s rendition restaurant, it just there's just something about that. It's a powerful movie. Um,
That's Chuck Berry. That's a
yeah,
Chuck Berry number.
that's right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right. And of course, Back to the Future, he's playing Chuck Berry. Uh, you know,
Yeah. On stage.
yeah,
Yeah.
on stage,
Kicks
and
over the amp. Yeah.
yep. Funny. Um, you've been moving on, changing streams here. We're going to talk about some of the paramedic and disaster stuff. You've been a part of federal and state disaster, response teams since 9/11. Um, What event or scene from those deployments, the stuff you've done, that's anything that's like stayed with you and resonated with you from your stuff that you've done?
Yeah. I guess, it's just amazing. Um, like I spent about a month, I got deployed to Katrina. Uh,
Wow.
spent about a month down there. And
Wow.
we were one of the first teams in a town on the other side of Lake Pontchartrain, and it was just devastated. And it was like apocalyptic. I mean, and so and same thing. I spent about a month in Puerto Rico after Hurricane Maria.
Wow.
And that was a lot of the same thing. And let's see, what's another one? I guess all the here in Missouri, we had a terrible tornado, 2011 in Joplin, Missouri.
I remember
Um,
that.
and it was almost, in all these circumstances, it looks like the foot of God has come down and just stomped on, you know, everything. And so it's just there's nothing. It's just wiped out. And so I mean, of course, seeing the devastation and working with the people that are there, that the survivors, and I worked the morgue in Katrina for a couple weeks, so I got to work with the non-survivors too. But it's just the spirit of the survivors and the spirit of people in those times are when the best and the worst come out in people. And the best is neighbor helping neighbor, and the worst is like in Katrina, you would see people put signs up, you loot, we shoot,
Wow.
So looters out there,
Wow.
people taking advantage of people's, that bad stuff that's happened. So, and the lack of law enforcement, the lack of public services, people just rob and steal whatever they want. And so, and and you've seen that anywhere. You can turn on the news now and see that
Sure.
kind of crazy stuff going on.
Sure.
So, yeah, those stuck with me. I mean, I could like any other cop or medic or anybody in the military or whatever, you can close your eyes and you can see it, and so it just never goes away.
Okay. Howard, how do you decompress after you see some of these, the Maria, the Katrina, on suffering and such? Do you decompress, and how do you after you see such suffering on such large scales?
I mean, a lot of people have different ways of doing it. I just compartmentalize. I just try to put it in a box and stick it back somewhere where I don't think about it. You know, um, I mean, I, I, I tend to think that I don't have PTSD. Because I mean, I've been in some pretty hairy situations, life or death things as a cop. Um, but I don't wake up in night sweats, and so I say I don't have PTSD, but then my wife and my kids say, "Oh, yeah, you do." Then maybe you do. So, but compartmentalizing, I mean, back in the day when I was really in it, when I was within all the situations, I'm sure I drank too much, you know. I did too many things that I shouldn't have done in order to kind of take the edge off. But I pass that now as an old guy, so I just stick it in a box and stick it in the back of my head and try not to think about it.
Okay. Okay. Now we're going to talk about Howard the novelist. You've
Hey.
you've you've written three novels, of course, wildly different genres. What compelled you to explore such varied worlds? And I'm holding a copy, the cover of the tapping that I pulled off. Uh, so I mean, it's fascinating because I don't do what you do. I write basically the same. The two novels I wrote are kind of like mirror images of each other. I just stay, but you've done three so uniquely different. That one that I read, the description, the I guess dystopian, the autistic kids.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
So how do you do that?
Well, my first novel was that dystopian thing. It was called The Mercury Vapor Lamp, a story of
Experience.
Asperger's, kids with Asperger's and aliens. And
Wow.
so this started off with,
Wow.
yeah, well, it started off with a couple of different. things that promulgated me to write. But the first one was I was thinking about, how when I was a kid, we would sit out on the porch and we would watch for the street lights to come on. I mean, it's not like we didn't have anything else to do, but that was just one of the things. We just wanted to catch it, and you could never catch when they immediately came on. So one of my thoughts was, what if when the street lights came on, something happened, something weird happened or something? So that prompted me to think, well, maybe the street lights were emitting some kind of special wavelength light that changed people's perception, and that led to some fictional stuff. And then I was also at the same time wondering whether I had Asperger's or not. So I was researching Asperger's, and so I ended up coming up with an idea about uh, aliens, extraterrestrials coming in, and only kids, young adults with Asperger's, their brains were attuned well enough that they could recognize them, much like if you remember the old TV show The Invaders, where there was the only way you knew the invader was an alien. I think their little finger was straight, or I can't remember exactly. But there's these kids with Asperger's were the ones that could actually identify that there was an alien invasion, and they saved the world. And so that was just kind of like a sci-fi um, story that I end up writing. And all started with a street lamp story. The tapping, the one you held up there, that was I had worked a cold case homicide of a particularly gruesome child murder of a 7-year-old child. And we worked it pretty hard with the FBI and everything, and we just didn't get the outcome we wanted. And so I started writing a novel about that case, and I fictionalized it, but a lot of the storyline and the tapping follow along the homicide cold case investigation we did, except my outcome in the book was more in line with what I wanted. So that was kind of like one of those things where the adage is you write what you know.
Okay,
I
okay.
was writing what I know in that one. Yeah. And it's got a spiritual component because in the real case, we were able to use a medium to connect some dots, which I never was much of a believer in mediums, but she was able to connect some dots that were pretty weird, and true. So it was a spiritual connection there. And then, of course, in my last book, Unseen Forces, that just that was a I was so concerned about the lack of privacy that I thought I'd write a book about, can the government control our minds more than they're doing now? And I used guys in a rock and roll band whose music was turned into some type of vibrations that made people think a particular way. And it's funny you should mention the glasses with your former employee. I have some really in the Unseen Forces book. They're using these really smart glasses that are able to see far into somebody's activities and what they're going to do next. And it's pretty weird stuff, but unfortunately, it's becoming less fiction and more fact with regards to government intrusion and technology that can actually know what you're thinking before you actually think it.
Interesting. And we're gonna go off on a. You referenced this, my latest book, 10 Things I Learned from the Billionaire, which I might as well plug myself. What the hell? Uh,
Hello.
but I worked for 25 years for the world's richest Italian, and he makes eyeglasses, and Mark Zuckerberg, the third wealthiest guy in America, flew to Italy 5 years ago to meet with my boss. And Mark Zuckerberg had this idea to take a pair of Ray-Bans or Oakleys and stick, what this can do into the glasses to make smart glasses, which is on the market now called meta glasses. And so Zuckerberg, I don't know, I spent 3 days with the guy and my boss, and I spent 25 years with him. And a lot of that stuff I learned is here. So anyway, interesting stuff. How do you balance realism with entertainment in your fiction? Uh,
Yeah, I mean, even though the some of the concepts are fictional, I like to try to keep it as close to what could be considered real, even though it may be something futuristic or not necessarily, you know, like in Aliens, there really aren't aliens living underneath the mantle layer of the planet. But in my book, there were, and do we have to have carbon-based aliens? I mean, do they have to be carbon-based? They have to have water? No, but so I try to keep most of my novels with some degree of realism so people can relate to it. So it's not totally, it'll never be that, so I'm going to put the book down. I'd like them to at least say, that maybe this could be. Let me read on.
How interesting. We can talk about this off air as well, but this coming Sunday, I'm interviewing um, uh, actually a friend of mine we went to high school with, but he's done all kinds of research and all kinds of writing and with UFOs and abduction and his theories and talking about the moon is not what we think it is and talking about who really built the pyramids and who's really living and Mount Shasta. I mean, it's really provocative stuff, and it's really provocative, and I'm so enchanted by, we got reunited not too long ago after 50, 60 years, 50, 60 years we got reunited, and uh, uh, and he's writing about all this, and we're going to do this interview about all this. So anyway, uh, which is a segue, and you just said it, and it's so fascinating. So your work frequently touches on spirituality and deeper questions, which you just alluded to. Um, how have your life how have your life experiences shaped um, this spiritual perspective that you have?
Well, I think I'm still here because I'm supposed to be here. And so some of the life or death things to where maybe, I might not have made it out of that, um, were guided by a divine hand. I mean, somebody was watching out for me. Somebody kept me safe, and so otherwise, we wouldn't be having this conversation. And it's also, I think, a lot easier to become more spiritual the older I get because I'm not, when you're younger, you're caught up in the everyday world and you're really busy with life. And now when we're closer to death, we can think more spiritually about what have we done, where have we been, and where we're going, And so we are where we are because this is where we're supposed to be. And it depends on whether you believe that you are where you are because you've been led there by a higher being, and I believe that. you know
Boy, we're uncovering some really interesting stuff here. Some parallels and some, you just said something, and 2 years ago, 2 years ago, my grandkids and son and daughter-in-law live nearby and stuff, and the kids came over on a Sunday night. I was watching football upstairs, and the grandkids came over and they were yelling for Grandpa to come downstairs. So I ran around the landing. I ran around the landing and I took one step, and it's a big steep landing, and I fell. So I fell down 7 steps. I'm 6'5". You can't tell.
Ouch.
I fell down 7 steps in front of the whole family and the dog. 7 steps with such force that I hit the landing, and then it then propelled me to somersault. So I now somersaulted down 4 more steps, putting my hand through
Oh,
the wall, and landed on the floor in front of them all. Got up, walked away without a scratch. and I actually called all my doctors the next morning, cardiologists, everybody. And do I need to run to a hospital, get my brain x-rayed? Am I going to have a brain bleed and stuff? And all four doctors said, Calvin, you should have died. Nobody 78 years old falls down 11 steps, puts a hand in somersaults, and gets up and walk away. So that was just one more. And that's what I wrote the Pope too when I wrote him. That happened. So it's a spiritual component, and I'm really happy and glad and filled with gratitude that some force held me together while I was doing that tumbling, which is,
There was a hand underneath you as you
oh, I know
tumbled
that.
down those steps.
Oh, I know that. I really know that. And I'm friendly with all my doctors, and every time I see them, Calvin, you should have died. And it's funny when one of my orthopedist was here for dinner a few weeks ago with his girlfriend, and when we finished dinner, he took the girlfriend and pointed to the landing. He said, "This is where Calvin fell down from and never got hurt." I could have broken a neck. If I don't die, you break a neck, a back, a bone, something. But
Sure, you
it's that's what I mean. There's just things beyond Howard, beyond our understanding and stuff. Um, Another interesting question. I got all these interesting questions for you. Do you believe creativity is born from joy or from pain or combinations of both? I guess both. I don't know.
you know, I would say that probably more from pain than joy, but probably both.
Okay.
I mean, because the pain, the problems, the dysfunction, the difficulties, that's what pushes you to do something, is when you're very comfortable and everything's great, it's unicorns and rainbows, you're really not going to write anything super duper or do anything super duper because you're going to just float along, but when things are not going so good, that's when you really start, activating. So pain probably, yeah.
Okay. Looking back on your body of work, what's the most emotionally difficult song you've written? What was the most fun?
Uh, well, I tell you, I guess one of the most emotionally difficult songs for me is one a good friend of mine that another police officer, uh, good friend of mine, and it's funny. It's not a funny story, but it's a serendipitous story. His daughter. We worked undercover narcotics together, and we had a lot of those same experiences where really tough times. But anyway, his daughter came down with cancer when she was just a baby, and she went into remission and grew up and everything. And every year he would have a poker run on motorcycles because we were all Harley riders, badass Harley riders back in the day, for his daughter. And there would be a cancer benefit for his daughter, poker run, place to place, and they make money for cancer research. And on one of them, he crashed on his motorcycle and died. And so all of us bikers, we got a black leather vest and they had patches all over it. And on his vest, he had a patch that said, "Cut one, we all bleed," which basically refers to the loyalty and the brotherhood amongst the military and cops and firemen, anyway. And so I wrote a song called "Cut One, We All Bleed" for him. And so it was a difficult song to write, but it's all about loyalty and brotherhood amongst those of us who either serve our country or serve our community in some kind of public service fashion. So that was a difficult song, but it turned out to be a great song. I even have a record company made a video of it. There's a video out there, "Cut One, We All Bleed" video. Um, and then I guess let's see, the most fun song. I wrote a song called "Trucks, Guns, Girls, Money, and Beer." And it's a fun little number. It's got like it is about trucks, guns, girls, money, and beer, but it's also got a kind of a Bonnie and Clyde theme to it because they are a couple of Bonnie and Clyde characters. And also, it's bilingual. So it's the only song that I have that I have some Spanish in it. So it was a fun song.
Okay. Okay. Kind of like the Super Bowl, with Bad Bunny.
Yeah, I
Um,
missed that.
uh, he did I guess most of his 12-minute halftime show was done in Spanish. Uh,
Really?
just kind of interesting. I think that's the first time. I just thought it was so well done. I mean, it was like a whole nother world that they had created on the field there. It was kind of amazing. Um, let's see. I alluded to this earlier. We're going to talk about the modern digital music landscape. Do you think it's helped or hurt independent musicians? By the way, I'm a self-published guy. I'm an indie author. You're an indie musician. That puts us into a wonderful, I think, one of the most exalted places to be an independent, self-published kind of person. Um, is this modern is the modern music landscape what's going on? Is it helping or hurting? That's part one. Part two, how do you feel in general about AI? And you can go to AI and say, write me a song, and here's my background.
Yeah.
How do you feel about that stuff?
Well, I think it's a mixed bag. And I don't I'm not too optimistic. Um, are you familiar with Suno?
No,
Suno?
no. Is
It's
that
it's
another
a
AI?
Yeah, it's an AI songwriting thing. And it's just it's free. I mean, you can pay for it to get higher levels of service, but you can type in lyrics and tell it you want this song. You type in lyrics and you can say, make this into a country gospel, rock song in the same spirit of Aerosmith or whoever, and all of a sudden it'll have a song. And I want guitar, bass, drums, I want a harp, I want a violin, I want an oboe. Whatever you tell it, it'll do, and it'll come up with a just wonderful song. It's like amazing. And so it's kind of amazing and terrifying at the same time that can happen. So, will that will that take the magic out of going to Nashville? Will it take it out? Because if you can do that, what do you need a studio for? You know? Um, so that's the downside of it. The upside is like we were talking about AI. Um, if you're struggling, I mean, you and I probably, we had thesaurus, we have poetry, we have rhyming, books. We would use all that stuff. Nowadays, you can go on AI, you can say, I'm searching for something that means um, whatever you want to talk about. I'm looking for something that says struggling to stay above the water level. And then it will give you a dozen and do you want and they'll give you dozens, and then it'll say, would you like this to be more gospel oriented, or would you like this to be more poetic? And then it'll give you another dozen. And so it can take the creative thought process out of the writer's hands and put it in a machine. But the initial idea still has to be the writer, unless it doesn't, and it starts doing it on its own. And if you and I both know that somehow or another, when your phone tells you you should shop for this and you mentioned it 6 hours earlier, it's all listening to us. So I don't know. I think it's, I'd like to be optimistic that it's going to be all this digital stuff will be a tool that we writers can use to our benefit, but I'm much afraid that it's not, that it's going to go the other way.
Hmm. Yeah, each day as I plunder, I've never used AI for my writing. AI can't duplicate me.
Right.
It might, and so everything I write is pure. pure, and that's just my own personal thing. Well, because the stories I tell are me, and the AI doesn't know me. I know me, but it does scare me. And people are so surprised about AI, but a lot of people forget. You might remember, Howard. You might remember uh, back in the '60s. I saw this movie, 2001: A Space Odyssey, and you'll remember it. And at the end, Hal.
Well, Dave,
Yeah, that's right. And people forget that was the first slap in the face indoctrination that we got, informing us about the capabilities of what AI could do. That was pure AI. That was a computer trying to take over the ship, and that was in the '60s. Arthur Clarke, wrote that, and uh, and he told us back in the '60s this stuff's coming, and now it's here ever so fast. Uh,
I guess what's even more in my mind, which is more concerning, is that these are the platforms and the things that the public is seeing. God knows what the government has,
correct,
you know.
correct. God only knows. Scary stuff. It's funny. I do some work, uh, and some marketing and stuff work, and I go to Google and I type. Um, I type my name and it spit out a whole bunch of stuff. And then I go to Google AI. There was an AI portion, and I typed that and let that, and it started to tell me things about myself, like, oh, wow. And then it was one thing, and I don't even know how they found that. It was a little philosophy I have about my channel, and I don't know where and how. And it's that really scared the hell out of me how that knew. So scary stuff. Anyway, uh,
Happy
I'm loving
talk.
talking to you here. This has been really good stuff. Um, as we wind down, what legacy do you hope your music and writing will leave behind?
Uh, I don't know if I don't know if I'll have a legacy, I mean, I'm just a guy on the planet that's done some pretty cool stuff and had some fun doing it and, you know, did some things that I probably wished I wouldn't have done and not done some things I probably wish I would have. Um, will my songs live after me or will my books live after me? I doubt it. I mean, I have an uncle that was he was a virtuoso classical pianist, went to, did a Fulbright scholarship in Germany, I think. And, he taught and he was a frequent lecturer, played Carnegie Hall any number of times. And I've got a couple of his albums and I've got some of his sheet music, but nobody knows him. But me or the family members that have survived. He had a, he had a, 15 minutes of fame back in the 60s. And um, now it's, I've got the albums are up on a shelf, So will anybody remember me? Will I have a legacy? I don't know. I hope my grandchildren and great grandchildren remember me. But as far as the general public, nope.
Okay, okay. Hey, I wrote my novel, which is kind of like it's kind of my story, but not. But and so my grandkids, they might be able to read it. Um, last question, two pronged. Do you have any next song, next novel, and of course, where can people find your work?
Actually I am working on like four new songs all at one time. I've been in the studio, recorded one. I've got another four to do, and a couple, three of them are more spiritually based. Like I said, as I got older, I'm doing the more spiritually based. Couple of them are still the kind of the country song type stuff. But a couple spiritual ones. So that's my next thing. I don't have any novels in the offing right now, just because I've been concentrating on songwriting, and gigging musician, so I'm out there playing shows, sometimes a couple times a month, sometimes 4 or 5 times a month, depending on where I'm booked at. So I'm kind of busy doing that, and noveling really, it's a really a commitment to sit at your typewriter or a computer and type all the time, and then rewrite and then edit and re-edit and that kind of. So I'm concentrating on songs more so. As far as I don't know when that CD will come out. Just depends on how soon I get back into the studio and stuff. But um, you can find me. I mean, I got a website, howardlevinson.net. I mean, I'm got a website and a YouTube channel, and I get most of my songs, well, not all of my songs, but a bunch of my songs are on different streaming platforms, Spotify and iTunes, and Bandcamp is one I like a lot that has a lot of my songs on there. But it's all free streaming stuff. So if somebody searches, there's another Howard Levinson's a medical doctor somewhere, but there's no Howard Levinson that's singer-songwriter or novelist but me.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. So this has been good stuff.
It has been.
This has been really good stuff. Provocative. Your journey, I think, is truly amazing. It's
Thank you.
by the way, yeah, and I'll even take it one step further. It's kind of kind of like you can make a movie about this stuff. Your journey. Uh, I mean, the stuff you've done. And it's funny. I'm friendly with a screenwriter. No names mentioned. We met on LinkedIn, and he's a very accomplished screenwriter, and we're going to be hanging around next Thursday just to BS, and I'm going to talk about you.
Be great.
I'm not threatening you, Howard. I'm just saying I'm going to talk about you because the stuff you've done, my goodness, is kind of amazing. Just to throw it out there on my own, no, just what the hell? I'm going to throw it out there because it's really quite a journey, you've been on. Of course, living
It has been a journey. It's not necessarily been the greatest journey or the
whatever,
best journey,
but
but it's been a journey.
it's been a journey, and that's what's really interesting. So, and actually, I'll tell him to watch this interview if he's so moved. But anyway, this has been great, and it's been wonderful meeting you. And I'm going to check more things out. And I said this to you before he went on air. I sit in this chair 12 hours a day, and down the road, you release some songs or whatever. We want to kind of just chat about it. That we can do part two. You know, because
Kindred soul. You know what, Calvin? You really are a kindred soul. I mean, we're we're uh we're not that far apart in
no, we're
age
not
and
that far
life
apart. And
life experience, and so yeah, this has been great.
yeah, it has been great. And my spiritual component, it's all there in my book, all the stuff. Some of the stuff that's happened to me is so haunting. It's all it's for everybody, I always promote for everybody, all that spiritual stuff is all in here verbatim. I didn't change anything around. It's just it's a fascinating world. So I'm going to stop recording. Don't leave. We'll do a 2-minute wrap. And again, thank you so much for
Thank you.
for being here, Howard. Thank you. Thank you. Boom.